Just a question to me. We wrestle with human rights in my company. I don't think we have it right by any means. But one of the things that I struggle with, and I struggle with our business, is that human rights is one part of a supply chain. Of course, also the supply chain also has a very positive impact in as much as that we're creating jobs and creating welfare internationally as well. For other companies as well, of course, we're doing a huge amount of good in the work that we're doing and the direct employment that we have for our staff. And so keeping our staff in a job at the moment is pretty important. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, downstream as well, in the products and services that we provide as well, we hope that our products are also doing good for society as well. And one thing that we are wrestling with is knitting all of that together and really integrating it. We don't have the answer to that at the moment, and I just wonder if you have any insights on that.
Thank you for the question. I think it's a highly relevant one because supply chain issues tend to be some of the most difficult. Let me perhaps just draw on an interesting experience of one of the companies that has been involved in the Business Leaders Initiative on Human Rights. That initiative was based on an earlier grouping, a Business Leaders Initiative on climate change. Companies that came together in the late 90s to reduce their carbon footprint. And they gave leadership. It's now very common, but at that time they were reaching out. But even more pioneering was this Business Leaders Initiative on human rights, because they were really pathfinding in an area that, as you say, is quite complex and difficult. And one of the companies that asked to join a little bit after this initiative had been established was the Gap, because they had had problems in their supply chain and quite a lot of controversy about the fact that they were sourcing goods from local suppliers who were abusing labor rights and child labor, etc. And they decided to correct their problems as best they could. They issued a social rule and actually thought that because they admitted they had problems, that they would be very criticized by Amnesty and other NGOs, and found, I think somewhat to their surprise, that actually they were being encouraged. The message was, you know, the Gap is going in the right direction, etc. So they joined the Business Leaders Initiative and became very active in working through these dilemmas, discussing them, discussing exactly the points that you've been raising. And then about 2 years ago, there was an incident where a small NGO in India went into a small factory and videoed very bad labor practices. And it was discovered that some of the goods were in fact being supplied to the Gap, among other companies. And the Gap was again in the headlines for the wrong reasons. But they were able to address that problem with particularly mature responses, if I could put it that way, because they had taken the time to understand what was their responsibility. So the first point they made was, look, we have a very large range of suppliers and sub-suppliers. We can never guarantee 100% that there will not be that kind of problem. And we said that from the beginning. We will destroy the goods that have come from that company because we do not accept that suppliers would have these bad practices. We will not immediately cut off this small supplier. We will go and work with them because this is jobs locally. And if we can, we will try to get them to raise the standards. If not, we will cut them from our supply chain and so on. And you know, within a week, their problems had been addressed in a very straightforward way. And I think that's part of what being very conscious of what the appropriate human rights responsibilities are can do for a company in that kind of supply chain area. Make them very confident, make them fully understand what the reputational risk is and how they deal with it. And I know from further discussions with senior representatives of the Gap, they're still very worried about what's happening in their supply chain and everybody's supply chain, because there has been a race to the bottom.